No, someone has to share with me. The reduced contributions to outside agencies by 5%. How much money do we appropriate now for let's say big brothers and big sisters? And are they active in the county? Do we know whether they are taking and participating with any of the young people in Caroline County?
According to the documents that they supplied during the budget process, yes. I don't remember offhand whether it's a handful or a dozen, but supposedly, according to what they submitted, they do.
They have a presence in Caroline County, or do the young people have to go to Fredericksburg to participate in that?
That I do not know.
I think it's something we probably need to find out as to whether they have a presence here in the county.
That's what
at all.
I think we had private conversations with the Caroline Promise folks that were here last meeting, because that was their purpose, to ask to use the Big Brothers Big Sisters money for their program, which is all Caroline. And I thought at that time they said there wasn't really any funding from Big Brothers used here. But I can't see that far, but I don't see anybody's shape that would be from Caroline's Promise. Shape. I can't see that far, so I'm looking for shapes.
Tell you what, if you would, get back with us with that information. I think you can contact Big Brothers Big Sisters, find out how many of the young people in Carolina are participating in their programs, whether they have a presence here in the county or whether our young people have to go to Fredericksburg to participate in the programs. How does it work? And then if you can tell me, was it $15,000 or $10,000 that we
I think it's 15.
allocate to them?
Mr. Chairman, I think at the last meeting when Ms. Rollins spoke from Caroline Promise, at that point they said there were no children being serviced by Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Caroline County. And that was their reason for asking for the funding that was given to Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Right. I remember that, Mr. Underwood. What I'm going to do is to make sure that if they can give us names of people that participate in the program, then I think that shows that there's program participation. But I don't know. But I did hear Ms. Rollins say that, and we'll go.
It's currently budgeted at $7,500.
Oh, so it's $7,500. May find, may find a way for the chamber. Okay. The other, on the 5% that we reduce contributions to outside agencies, that includes RADCO?
Yes, sir.
Or George Washington Regional Commission?
The only one it does not include is the Fred Transit, but it includes everybody else.
Okay. Other questions of Mrs. Hatcher?
No, that's not the dispatcher.
Further discussion on what's being proposed?
I guess I have a question on the elimination of the impact of the 5% VRS employee contribution due to vacancies. Are those two positions being planned to be empty for the whole year?
No, what that means is when I drafted the salary portion of the budget and I put in the numbers for all the salaries and benefits, at that time, this issue with VRS had not come up. So I had left in the whole amount of the 16.5%. The General Assembly, when they finally got through with whatever they were going to do with the VRS issue, stated that new hires or rehires would have to pay that 5% member share after July the 1st. Period. End of story. They don't get a choice. So I was able to back out the couple of positions, hoping that when they fill positions, they wouldn't be with vested people. So the several vacancies that I have accounted for, you have a savings there by not having to pay that 5%. It works.
wasn't paying attention.
I was going to say, aren't we raising, this is, this,
I'm not in the numbers now.
so we're not raising the salary of the new employees 5%?
No, that is not required under the law. If the board decides to do the 5 and 6, then the issue will have to be decided if we're raising the salary scales or not.
That's a new wrinkle. I guess that's a decision we need to make in this process because it does have impact as
Yes, sir,
we
it
see.
does. But at the time we were looking at these cuts, we were going on the premise of a 1-and-1. Those employees would have to pay their entire 5% and not get a benefit of any kind of increase.
And I guess my other question is the Victory Park, that's borrowed money, correct, the $87,000?
Yes, sir, it is.
Because I was kind of curious how we were cutting that out when it's borrowed.
It's not that it's being cut out, per se. If the board elects not to do Victory Park, that money, the way the bond was set up, stated Victory Park in the county admin building. What this will do is, because that money is accounted for in the capital projects fund, that's where it sits, it makes a transfer to the general, or to debt service, which reduces the general fund's transfer to debt service. You'll be able to apply it to debt service, and it decreases my transfer,
Okay.
which is where the cut comes in.
Other questions? Mr. Black, you have questions? Mr. Taylor?
Well, I do. Are we going to go down this list and approve each one of these, or do it one at a time, or, you know?
We can make any changes that we'd like to this list as we go through the list, and then we can approve the list as a whole if you'd like.
Okay. All right. Under the Comprehensive Services Act,
Yes, sir.
we said that we may not be able to do that, obviously, but I guess we'll leave it in here, and then if they need more funding, we will have to address it at the time.
And I think, as I mentioned the last, I think it may have been the work session we had with the school board last week. It's my understanding, Mrs. Hatcher, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that it did not end up costing us as much as we had thought at this point that it was going to be this year. And so we felt like you felt like that you could reduce it by $150,000. And unless something extraordinarily happened next year that did not happen this year, then we would be within the expenses that we incurred this year with the $150,000 cut. The same thing applies basically to the Middle Peninsula Juvenile Center. The same thing applies there. We did not spend as much. The Pamunkey Regional Jail, pretty much the same. When we get to the, the Pamunkey Regional Jail was that there was an issue, one of our sister counties, if you will, that's involved in the regional jail, had some issues with the budget that was presented by the jail authority. And so they went back and revisited their budget and reduced some of their cost, or tried to reduce some of their cost, which in essence reduced our portion of the cost as well as Hanover County's portion and the town of Ashland's portion. So again, if things do not stay the same, and if we put more inmates into the Pamunkey Regional Jail, then of course our costs are going to go up. There's no question. But as long as nothing extraordinarily happens next year that did not happen this year, then I think staff feels pretty comfortable that we can stay within our budget after these cuts have been made.
Okay, and of course, the reduction to schools is a part of this budget, and I know that that's what most people are sitting here waiting for, to see, what the board is going to do or how the board plans to address that. I would just say, even before we get into the the discussion of that with specifics. My concern is that with the increase that the school received because of the composite index, I think they received a little over $700,000 in additional money because of the composite index. Also, the state looks at localities and determines what localities can pay based on their generating of funds through taxes or whatever. The state has pretty much said that Caroline County cannot afford to fund education to the point that it should be funded, and that's why that $700 and some thousand was there in the first place. What the state does not address is our funding for all the other departments, law enforcement, fire and rescue, and all the other things that we fund. But if our resources are there and the state recognizes that, then we have to find those funds from somewhere. So I think what my concern is, we have to look at those numbers and determine what we can do, whether it be reduction or not. We have to look at how much of a reduction we can do and still have the school have a resources to do what they do. And I don't think any department has all the money that it needs. But we give them as much as we can, whether it be schools or whether it be fire and rescue, sheriffs or whatever, and hope that they can function. And certainly if the middle of the year comes and there is an emergency, for example, we know that there is some concern about the HVAC system at the hospital. If they come back, if that system does not work, we're going to have to take care of it because we can't send children in there without heat. Or at least I certainly would not want to do that, and I don't think anybody else would. So what we have to decide is that we want to look at that 200,000 or some other number, or just how the board wants to address that. But we need to talk about it.
All agree? Okay. All agree. Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Chairman, I did not make the meeting last Wednesday and certainly apologize. I was out of town, but my feeling about the funds is that we do have to, we talked about funding the VRS for the county and for schools as well, and I think that is a good thing. I do think that since there is an increase in composite index, that we have to take a look at it to make sure that we're able to, again, do the business of the county. My concern, again, is that we also have an obligation to reduce our debt. So I think we should do all we can to reduce costs, save money, pay down the debt. When we talked about the tax increase, and I've talked to many of my constituents, had we not had a tax increase, we increased the debt service by over $2 million. We'd be operating on a budget for the rest of the county of about 62 cents rather than 68 cents. That means the school would have lost positions, the county would have lost positions based on the 62 cents that was remaining. So we have to be honest with what we're doing. We were, and I want to make it clear, we were at 68-cent tax rate. If we did not pay any money for the principal for Lewis and Clark. Now there is over $2 million additional debt service that has to be paid. And that was the reason that I took to my constituents, because I said I would not vote for a tax increase. If we didn't vote for a tax increase, we would be sitting here talking about losing jobs in the schools and in the county, because we would not be able to afford a $2 million debt service. So I think all of it has to be looked at, and we have to be equitable. And I think they're going to receive additional funds. I think we have to look at it and say, is there a way to make it equitable for all? And that's my position.
Mr. Seeley?
You know, the composite index is a formula that Mr. Thomas and I went to Richmond on a long time ago, and the way it's calculated and what it brings the county and what we derive is one of those mysteries I don't think we'll ever solve. But with the increase in the VRS payments, you know, we're talking about the county doing a 5 and 6 so that the actuary comes in next year and starts looking at our retirement debts or our retirement payment system doesn't hit us for additional money in 2015. And if we don't move that way with all of the retirement funds we pay, we're all going to end up paying more one way or the other. So I think that the money that was received from the state to the school system, we need to give them the ability to do the 5 and 6 at one time, the same as the county, and solve that puzzle while we can. And I think the $200,000, I believe the superintendent has told us that's what it's going to take to actually give them the ability to solve that problem in one budget year, just like what it's going to take us to solve it in one budget year. We have questions because it's an additional, as Mr. Thomas and I found out, $175,000. I understand that the school system would have the equal problem of having to solve that problem also. So I think that solves a problem. We either solve it this year or we solve it next year. And either way, it's got to get fixed. And I think the sooner we fix it, the better off we'll be in the review cycle.
Mr. Thomas?
Okay, I've got a long circuitous route, but if you'll allow me, I'll eventually get there. First of all, the Milford streetlights in our budget, and this happened before my time. Actually, it happened so long ago that I had hair. But this was an arrangement made between the county and the citizens of Milford. And even if it were still Mr. Seeley's district, I would say that we made this arrangement with the citizens of Milford that we would pay their streetlights, and they would not become a town. That was the arrangement, and like I said, it was probably in the 70s. I would like to not eliminate that now, but if we do plan to phase it out, maybe we would give Mr. Schiebel or utilities plenty of time to let them know, and they could make some arrangements. I think for this year it might be an issue. So that's the one, and then I guess what we really want to talk about is schools, and we might as well talk about schools now. Mrs. Carson was here, and she asked us to waive the $46,000 fee for connection. And I think before I've mentioned how many times we've waived fees. We've waived millions of fees for connections, for businesses, for schools. And then people say the utility system's bleeding money, and that's not really the case. So I think the board said we weren't going to waive any more fees. We were just going to pass the money through. So I guess we would have to give them $46,000 more and then take that right back, but then the utility system would get the exact credit. My main concern, and we mentioned this, Dr. Kilo, I guess is still here or might not be here, but last year, about this very time last year, the school board, after the budget process and during their whole year, they had $350,000 left at the end of the school year. That $350,000 we used, well, the school board asked if we would allow them to use that again, and we let them use that because the process is any unused money at the end of the year comes back to the county general fund. We allowed them to use that $350,000 to give raises last year. So, well, there were supposed to be bonuses. I think they turned out to be bonuses and raises or whatever. But anyhow, at the end of last year, there was a $350,000 sum of unused money for whatever reason. This year, considering that $350,000, I think we should, as a board, since we fund categorically, I would like to categorically fund the $1.7 million, 1.755 and change, that would get the schools the 6% raise and pay for their VRS. So we can actually fund that directly and say, we're going to do this. And then all of the folks that were here looking for raises, or the folks that deserve raises, I think, let's just put it that way. They deserve raises and they deserve to be treated fairly. They would get those. But I think also understanding that the situation the county's in, that we asked the school board budget to do the same thing they did last year. They did a great job last year. They cut some corners in some ways, and they returned $350,000. Now, some folks have asked for no cuts. Some folks have asked for $1 million in cuts. You know, I just happen to know that. I think we're at the point where 350 would be a number that we could all swallow. I know it's, you know, not what anybody wants, but it's probably going to be what's best for the county now. And I think those are the two things that I'm looking at. If we need to go forward or discuss it more, we can.
Okay. I've started going through the chamber, and I have no problem with the Milford Lights as long as we possibly can talk in terms of phasing them out over a period of time, because it is the only community in the county that we do have streetlights that the county pays for. And so I would like to see us look at phasing that over a period of time.
I'll work to
And
That's fine.
yeah, but this year you're probably absolutely correct. It's out. As far as the school funding is concerned, for the last several, and I do mean several years, there has been money left over at the end of the year. And I guess that's the part that bothers me is each year, whether it's the school board or whether it's whoever, says we are not funding them the way they need to be funded. But each year, they have money left over. Now, I commend them for that, but we've always allowed them to use that money for schools. We have never said, give that money back to county government. I have no problem in supporting the reduction of $350,000 this year from the standpoint that the positive index did change this year, which in essence says that localities are less able to maintain the level of funding they have in the past. And so that makes a difference. That was $746,000 more money received because of the positive index change, and Caroline County's was lowered. You know, I was given tonight, and I don't know where it come from, to be honest with you. But I look at Chesterfield County. If I look at Chesterfield County spends $54 more on a student than Caroline County does, per pupil. I'm sorry?
They have 58,000 students.
Listen, the number of people makes no difference whether it's 4,000 or 400,000. The fact is, it's cost per pupil. That's what we're looking at, is the cost it takes to educate each pupil in the school system. King George is $144 more per pupil. So again, I want to give the schools all that we can. I think we've tried to do that over the years to provide the funding for the schools that we could possibly provide for them. And this list here shows, and I'm assuming this information comes from the school system. Is that correct? No, I know, but somebody has to give them the information.
You need him to come on.
Okay. But I also see in here where it says that debt retirement is zero for Caroline County. That is not the case. It's a little over $3.5 million of school debt retirement for Caroline County, but it shows zero here, so I'm not sure where that zero came from, to be honest with you. Is what I'm trying to figure out is who gave that number to them. So that's my position as president. And today, and this is 2011 numbers. I understand that today's numbers, it's about 9,300. Yeah, 9,300 times. Okay. All right. Now we can make changes to this.
I do want to make sure that we all understand that part of my position is we fund by category school. And We don't have their budget, so we don't have all our categories yet.
And that's what we normally do is.
But we fund by category.
Right.
So whatever category, the 1.7 million for teacher raises, bus driver raises, all the other assistants and whatnot, whatever category that goes into, I am willing to fully fund that. And that's my position. And then that reduction is basically where they were before, and we did have 600,000 extra debt service for schools this year. So just some of that come back, and I think we've made a good compromise.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Mr. Black?
So you're looking for a total of $350,000 in cuts to the schools. Is that what I'm getting, Mr. Thomas? Whether categorically or not, is that what we're saying? $350,000 in cuts?
Well, I'm not looking for any cuts.
Well, I mean, I know you're not looking for any cuts, but is the number three?
I'm
No one's looking for any cuts.
I'm not looking for any cuts when it comes to salaries in that category, so that they would get a total of $1,755,508 based on the information that Dr. Kelo gave us last week.
Okay. So where would you be taking the cuts from?
That's not up for me to decide.
Okay. You know, one of the things when we've been doing, Mr. Chairman, Matt.
Mr. Black, go ahead.
Thank you. One of the things, and I understand we have a very, very difficult budget situation. I got to be honest, I'm a huge baseball fan. So you can make numbers, you can take numbers, and you can do anything with numbers. I think we all understand that up here. One of the things we were talking about when we were talking about making cuts, we were talking about discretionary versus non-discretionary funding, and staff would say, well, you know, this is how much someone can cut. I kind of went ahead and did a little math myself with Dr. Anderson at the last meeting. And whether you want to admit it or not, an operating budget includes salaries and benefits. That's simple as that. I've heard people say to me, well, my operating budget's only $500,000 because that takes away salaries and benefits. The reality behind it, a school system, a business, your operating budget is your salary and benefits. With that in mind, I did some math about the proposed budget cuts to the various agencies. I saw that the Board of Supervisors were being cut 0.5%. The Commissioner of Revenue is being cut 0.6%. The Treasurer's Office, 0.8%. The Sheriff's budget total 1.2% cuts. In the schools, 1.7%, and if you add the availability fee for Bowling Green, about 2%. So once again, the schools are taking the hardest hit. And we sit up here and we talk about capital investments, and I can't stress enough, I understand they got more money from the state. I get that. But considering numbers that we have from percent of operating towards schools, Caroline County gives 29% of its general fund budget, okay, to the school system. Louisa County gives 44%. King George County gives 40%. Orange County, 41%. Spotsylvania County, 50%. Hanover County, 50%. And King William County, 51%. My concern is that however you want to cut it, $350,000, considering our percent to the schools will be going down. However you want to cut it, it's still going down. I would also suggest that whatever the percent the schools are cut, that we ourselves up here take that cut if we're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Could I just add one correction to Mr. Black's math?
Mr. Thomas.
The $40 million county budget includes $11.5 million for schools, and that's where you're getting your 27%, 29. But we also have $3.5 million in debt service. That's part of that. So if you add that, then you're talking about 40% of our budget goes to schools. That's correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the reality is 40% of our total operating budget goes to schools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, I would love to give more money to schools. I would love to give more money to Sheriff's Office. I'd love to give more money to things. I had a constituent say the other day, we can never have too many public safety people.
Right.
Yeah, we can, but I can't pay for them all. That's the thing. I'm doing the best I can with what I have. And that's all. I'm trying to make a good compromise to get us through this year. And considering the debt service we have and the actual money that we're given, we're doing pretty good. The $700,000 extra from the composite index is not part of that $488,000 that came at the end of the year. So that's $1 million more the school system has been given by the state. And their budget would be $1 million more if we kept, our goal was level funding. I said that in December of last year, knowing that we would be in this position. Level funding is what we tried to do. So we're 99% of level funding. I mean, we're 99% of level funding. We had a 4-cent tax increase, but the 4-cent tax increase pays for $1 million debt service for utilities, 2.5 cents of debt service for new school debt. As Reggie said, I could have been going from 68 to 62. That tax increase just basically kept us going.
Okay, maybe I'm a little confused on the math here. Level funding, the school system last year got 11.5, correct? For local. Okay, so if we cut them 350, okay, now we're down to what, 11.15? So I guess the question is, how are we seeing that we're level funding about 99%? I guess the 99% is lost on me.
Okay, divide.
I mean, we're doing local money only. We're not
divide 11.2 by 11.5. Let's do that right now.
Let me add, Mr. Black, one thing, and this is certainly
97.3%.
certainly before you came on the board. The composite index for Caroline County, I've forgotten whether it was 4 years ago or 5 years ago, but
cost us $1 million.
it increased drastically.
Right.
And it cost the county $1 million one shot, in 1 year. We had to come up with $1 million more to make up that difference. So we have tried that.
But we have cut that million since then. We've taken more than $1 million out of the school budget since I've been here. Probably $1.5 million. Is that not true, Dr. Kelo? In reductions that they gave us over a period of time, because we had to go backwards in 2009.
2009.
We went backwards how much?
We went up $1 million in 2009.
That was when we
Yeah,
made.
we went up $1 million.
Right.
That's a list. That's the list you gave me.
2008, we went back $1 million.
The list you gave me at the meeting last Wednesday says that we went
Let
from
me see that list.
11,342 to 12,342 in 2009. Now, in 2010, we went back. But I don't know where that, I don't recall taking $1 million from that time.
No, what happened was,
That's what he
and
said.
I kind of recall, because that was the year we were first taking the first hit on the budget crunch, and that's the year we actually laid people off.
Yeah, but we didn't go back $1 million. We didn't do
I think it was 400,000 or 500,000, something like that.
No, but it was $1 million because they gave us money in the
That's-
beginning of the year, the end of the year.
That's that sheet. But that's,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Black and I were just having a conversation sidebar, and I apologize. But I want it to be understood that my concern again is that you cannot say no tax increase and sit here and talk about giving additional funds. That angers me to no end.
Mr. Underwood.
Because, okay.
Back, Mr. Underwood's talking.
Let me finish it, Mr. Black, then I'll let you go. We would be cutting positions in the school system if we did not have a 4-cent tax increase, because we needed that $2 million additional funds. I went to my constituents and told them I was sitting here all year saying no tax increase, no tax increase, and my constituents clearly said, and some of them are sitting in the audience, they were there at the meeting. They said, yes, I will support the 4-cent because we need it. However, I'm asking you to go out and cut if possible. If there's additional funds coming in to the school, I don't think we should take all of it. I think they should be able to expand. I think they should, and we want the teachers to have the 6%, 5%. I think that's only fair. But to sit here and argue that we should give additional funds when you wouldn't even vote for a tax increase to keep us going, to me, is just, I don't feel good about that. Mr.
Once again, the reality behind it is, I mean, the tax increase brought us 1.8 million. In addition, since there's kind of we get a bump in this year's fiscal year too, we get about 800,000 on this fiscal year, correct, from that tax increase? Was it around 800,000? Okay, so it's 2.6 million. The reality behind it, the schools are not. I don't see how the schools are getting any money from that additional tax increase. So we can say we increase taxes to help the schools, but we're not giving the schools anything additional.
They're getting $600,000 in debt service. Is that nothing?
Every school system on here has debt service for
Ours
schools.
says zero.
But all the others tell you what they're paying, and that's not in the per pupil cost.
Ours says zero.
Well,
This is from the Department of Education. Like Mr. Akers said, I didn't put this information out here. Somebody else did, and I know last year we paid $3 million or 2.8 in debt service for schools. Now we're paying 3.5 or whatever the number is. I didn't do that. This came right off the Department of Education website, right? Right. I did the same thing with numbers from 2009, but they didn't have debt service in them.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Taylor?
you know, I certainly concur that we don't want to see the school board budget cut. But I can tell you, and I don't know about you all, but I've received call after call from citizens who are concerned about the tax increase that we did. They're concerned about personal property. They're concerned about real estate. But as Mr. Underwood has said, had we not done that, we would be talking about a lot more of a cut than we're talking. If we had not bared the burden of the tax increase to generate the revenue that we need, we'd be talking much more of a tax increase. The issue is there's just only so much money. And we can sit here day after day, night after night, but you cannot give what you do not have. The other thing I would like to point out is I would like to see county employees get some kind of a salary increase. They've gone for some years without a salary increase as well. And I don't want to make it seem like, you know, I worked with the school system. I'm a retired educator. I was with the school system, this very one that we're talking about, for 33 years. I have a child at the middle school. My son graduated from the high school. I have nothing but good things to say about the school system, and I want the school system to do as much as we can. But at the same time, we have other debts and other concerns other than just the school system. And we cannot just ignore those as well. The fact is, they got $746,000 more because of the composite index. And even if we reduced our budget by some $300,000, they still over $300,000 to the good.
Plus the 488.
Plus the 488. Anything that they have left over at the end of the year in their budget, we've agreed to let them use that, or certainly we will consider it. So based on those things, I just think we've done everything that we can. I think we've done a good job with what we had to do with. And again, I can't stress enough, if we have a problem with that HVAC system at the school, we're going to have to deal with it. And the other thing is, this is my 17th year on this board. I've never seen the school come back to this board for additional help if they could show that they needed, that we did not address it. So I just think this is just the best we can do.
Can I add one, Mr. Chairman? The total new money for the school's composite index and then just changes in the formulas is $1,882,928. Now, about $640,000 of that was just for the VRS change, so that it's more than just $700,000 additional dollars to their budget, and that's from their numbers.
And again, Mr. Chairman, you don't want to see sausage and laws made, but I've had discussions with every supervisor here just about regarding the budget, and they have gone from cuts from $0 to $1 million. You know, if based on the getting 1.8 million more money, there have been supervisors who've said it should be $1 million. I'm saying 350 is a fair number, and specifically for me, 350 and earmarking funds for teacher and assistant supplemental raises is a good number just to get us through this year. I'll be happy to be with you next year and give them more money.
Mr. Thomas, would you make that in a motion that we accept the cuts that have been recommended by staff, with the exception of the three changes that have been made?
Okay, let me get that up here. So the three changes we made, we're pulling out reductions to outside agencies?
Well, that wasn't you. Is that something we want to bring out? Reduction to outside agencies?
We're going to do these again, I'm sure. Are we ready to do all of these right now? Okay, let's do the ones we're not going to do Milford Street lights.
Right.
We're not going to do the chamber. Right. We're not going to reduce these, is what I'm saying.
That is correct.
We're right now not going to reduce outside agencies.
That'd be good.
3, 9. The chamber was 7.
7,500.
So we're talking $20,000 of things we're not going to do. Okay, right now. Then I'm sure there's some more we could go through.
Could
All right.
I ask a question before you? We were talking about reductions, and you mentioned the George Washington Regional Commission.
That was an outside
He's
agency.
pulled that. He's
That's,
saying that's not
yeah,
right.
we're saying not doing that because that's an outside agency. That and the one where Mr. Botts used to come is Rappahannock Legal. All of those things that we fund a little bit.
Okay.
So this is Mr. Black, and you know you're my boy because you're a Yankee fan, right? But you can check my math. Our proposed level funding was 11,566. If we reduce that by 350, that would be 11,216. If we add the 46,000 for water, which they're going to pay back to the utility system, it would be 11,262. That would be a $300,000 reduction total. It's really 350 because they're going to pay the utility system back. So we're talking 97.4% of flat funding.
I'm going to vote against this. I'm going to be honest with you, and that's fine. I ran on a
Wanna
school's
see my shock
platform,
face?
but I will say this. I make a suggestion then, since we're funding them at 97%, in fairness, I think that we should take a 3% cut then in our own salaries. That's compromise.
Well, we cut the sheriff 22% of what he could cut.
Mr. Black, that doesn't hurt me. I'm retired, and so, my Social Security is affected by the fact that my salary that I make over here after a certain point. So, hey, I get the salary here, I lose it on Social Security. So, hey, you're not impacting me one way or the other there.
Yeah. Well, I never got I don't have enough salary.
I understand you don't.
I never got my salary increase
Right,
back
I just
when
want
everybody
Mr.
else
Black know
did,
he's not
so-
affecting me. It's just,
And we're talking $3 a month. Do you want me to put that in the motion? We're gonna.
yes, please, I'd like to
Okay.
put it into motion. We make these corrections, and we're going to approve at this point.
All right, and I need to qualify. Can I see that list? The motion would be that the motion would be that we, as part of our budget reductions, we are going to have further review on all of these, but we are not going to reduce contributions to the chamber. We're not going to reduce contributions to outside agencies. We're not going to reduce the Milford Street lights. We can discuss all the others later. We are going to appropriate by category eventually $11,262,000,000 to the school system, categorically making sure that $1.75 million is directed to the 6% VRS and salary increase for school employees.
I don't think there's a category for that. It's not just instructional, because that doesn't cover bus drivers.
You're
There's
right.
not a category.
Okay.
There are 6 categories
Okay,
that we can
okay.
appropriate money for.
And thank you for that
Salaries are in
clarification.
all the categories.
Well, I'm going to ask as part of my motion that $1,755,508, the actual number that was given to us Wednesday, be appropriated to the schools and requested that they make that the salary increases that they proposed to us.
But Mr. Cully just said it was 1 million. I mean, we got three different sets of numbers floating.